Hot Tees and the Center for T-Shirt Excellence, where we make your t-shirt dreams a reality. Normally, we would bring our custom apparel experience to you, but since we can't be on site today, we have created an online store that will be available for the next 5 days. Every shirt is made right here in our shop in Harrisburg, Oregon. Let me show you some of the options that we have. This tie-dye I'm wearing is one of my personal favorites, but wait, it's missing something. That's better. And if tie-dye isn't your style, we have a variety of other options. And we even have jackets and hats. Some say what we do is a little bit of magic, but to us, it is just part of a normal day. We hope you will shop with us online at hotteesapparel.com/Mount Hood Jazz.
What began in a small workshop in the Sellwood area of Portland over 75 years ago has now grown into the largest piano dealership in North America. For 4 generations, one Portland family has been honored to serve the piano needs of musicians, schools, institutions, artists, and music lovers throughout the Pacific Northwest and beyond. This is the evolving story of classic pianos, and the story of the Eunice family, a family steeped in the love of pianos. It all began when Maurice T. Schuster, a violinist with the Portland Symphony and piano technician, opened a small piano shop that specialized in tuning, servicing, and restoring vintage pianos. Within a short time, his reputation as a master piano technician was well established and the business grew steadily. The growth continued, culminating with bringing his grandson, Maurice Eunice, into the business in the 1970s, nurturing, coaching, and cultivating Maurice's love of pianos and piano restoration. After his grandfather's passing, Maurice continued in the piano business, eventually opening and growing a successful piano retail showroom in Portland, and then selling that business to a large national chain. In the early 90s, Maurice began serving as a piano and promotional consultant assisting piano dealers, and in early 2001 opened another small piano showroom in Portland with his son Brian under the name Classic Pianos. Soon Maurice was joined by his other sons, Aaron and Taylor. Since that short time, Classic Pianos has grown into the largest and most piano dealership in the U.S., with 7 showrooms throughout North America, including Portland, Seattle, Denver, Albuquerque, Las Vegas, Boston, Anchorage, and now serving all of the Hawaiian Islands. Even though the company has grown nationally, at its heart, it is still a family-owned and operated business with the belief that music can change lives for the better. Maurice has often said, "We deal with dreamers, professional pianists, teachers, beginners of all ages who want choices." Each pianist longs to find the perfect piano that suits their particular taste and preference. Ask what he means by choices, and Maurice explains it this way: "We continue to partner with the best manufacturers and never stop researching to ensure we offer value and quality. We carry pianos ranging from entry-level studio and professional uprights to heirloom models from Börsendorfer, Yamaha, Schimmel, and Estonia, as well as a comprehensive collection of nearly new, like new, and restored Steinways from every era."
To see how Classic Pianos can serve you and your piano needs, visit us at classicpianosportland.com.
Hey!
Hey!
Hi!
It's time to crack an egg.
Easy, any style egg works here.
Or smile.
Well done, this looks great.
Time to share a story.
I have a great way to start our discussion.
With old friends or new ones.
When you're a caregiver.
Time to breathe in.
Inhale up, good job.
Then let it all out. It's never been easier to connect, learn, and have fun.
Cheers!
So let's do it together. Come find us at aarp.org/near-you.
Hello, my name is Roland Andrews, Vice President of AARP. And on behalf of AARP and our AARP Oregon team, welcome to the 2021 Mount Hood Jazz Festival. As you know, jazz is a uniquely American art form that is deeply rooted in the African American Black tradition, culture, and heritage. But more importantly than any of that, jazz is just food for the soul. It provides a measure of peace, it can provide a measure of comfort, and it can provide overall healing in a time like this when we need it most. So, what I want you to do now is just sit back. I want you to relax and just take in those smooth, comfortable, cool, healing sounds of American jazz. So, on behalf of the organizers of the Mount Hood Jazz Festival and your good friends and wise defenders at AARP, welcome to the 2021 Mount Hood Jazz Festival. Thank you and enjoy.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the 2021 Virtual Mount Hood Jazz Festival. We are excited to bring you 3 days packed with interactive webinars and performances from artists around the country. Thank you for joining us for our next session, a masterclass with drummer Gerald Watkins Jr. Before we begin, I would like to thank our sponsors, including AARP Oregon, Clackamas County Bank, the City of Gresham, Classic Pianos, Gresham Sanitary, the Gresham Center for the Arts Foundation, Austin Custom Brass, and Spinella's Restaurant. These sponsors, as well as several partners and supporters, have allowed us to bring this festival to you this weekend. You can visit our website for a complete list and how you might also be able to help support the festival so we can continue to elevate our jazz community, both locally and beyond. During our session, please use the chat for any questions and comments that you might have, and I will direct them to Gerald as we go. Our next session features Gerald Watkins Jr. Gerald Watkins Jr. is a drummer and percussionist originally from Norfolk, Virginia, and is now residing in New Orleans, Louisiana. He has degrees in music from both Norfolk State University and Florida State University. He performs locally with many of the area's finest musicians and also tours abroad. He has performed with members of the Marsalis family, the New Orleans Jazz Orchestra, Dee Dee Bridgewater, Eric Benet, Ledisi, and many others. Aside from performing, Gerald loves to teach and mentor many of New Orleans' young creative minds at the Ellis Marsalis Center for Music. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Gerald Watkins Jr.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. First of all, thank you guys for having me. Thank you guys for everyone at the Mountain Hood Jazz Festival. Thank you guys. Thanks Dan and Sarah for having me. I'm looking forward to talking about these things we call the drums and examining the role of the drummer. So I'll begin this masterclass by telling a story, or actually by reading. I'll read something I prepared. Okay, so I say the drummer is arguably the most important member of the jazz ensemble. The phrase "your band is only as good as its drummer" has been preached for many years, and for a good reason. A bad drummer can be so detrimental to an ensemble that it's almost better to play without a bad drummer. It's better to play without a drummer than with a bad one. All right. So what makes a good drummer? What are these things that drummers do to make the music come alive and feel good? How can a beginning drummer do their job effectively? What can they do to become a seasoned musician? All these things we're going to talk about today. So as Sarah stated, I reside in New Orleans, which is a city full of great drummers. And the very first time I came to New Orleans was in the fall of 2015. And then that week, I got to see many great drummers that I admire. Drummers like Herlin Riley, drummers like Jason Marsalis, drummers like Jameson Ross, drummers like Jeff Tane Watts. I also got to see Jeff Ballard. He was in town that week. And all these drummers, The thing that they all have in common is they make the music feel good. Um, and the drummer, in my opinion, that most epitomizes a great feel is Herlin Riley. He is the godfather of New Orleans drums. And anytime I can see him play or anytime I can talk to him and ask him a question or two, I make sure I take full advantage of that opportunity. So let's talk about some things. So let's talk about feel. What makes a drummer feel good, okay? How does a drummer within a jazz ensemble, whether it be a small group or a large group, how does the drummer make that band come alive? How does that drummer make the music come alive? So here's some things that we're going to first talk about is to play musical time that generates a swinging feel. So you can't talk about jazz drums without focusing on the ride cymbal, all right? That is the thing that most of the band is listening to. That is the thing that the focal point of the music, and that's the thing that kind of draws everyone's ears inward. That's the thing that kind of unites the band is the ride cymbal. Okay, so we're going to start with talking about demonstrating a good ride cymbal beat. So the first thing about playing the ride cymbal is making sure that the sound of the beat is consistent, meaning that you're playing in the same area, meaning that the space between the beats are consistent, meaning that the volume of the beats are consistent, all right? So the first thing I'll do is I'll demonstrate how one would go about developing a feel on the ride cymbal. This could be done with a metronome and without the metronome. I recommend doing both, all right? So the first thing is, even before we attack the cymbal, is how do we hold the stick? We don't want to choke the drumstick. We kind of want our fulcrum to give us the control we need, and these following three fingers to give us the support we need, so the stick can move freely in our hand, but not loose enough where it falls out. So what I'll do is I'll demonstrate how to just strike the ride cymbal. You want to strike right in the sweet spot, right in the sweet spot. I don't know if we can get the other camera angle, but we want to play right in the sweet spot, not in the bell, not too far in the edge, but right in the middle. So now that we have a consistent sound, now we want the time to be consistent, all right? So here we go. I'll play 4 quarter notes. Or actually, I'll play a little bit longer. I'll play 16 quarter notes. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3, 4. Now, in jazz music, we have what's called the skip beat, all right? That is the and of 2 and of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. 2, 3, 4, 1. 2, 3, 4, 1. 2, 3, 4, 1. All right? So once we develop a consistent sound, a consistent feel, we want to start incorporating the other members of the drum set, all right? So what I'm going to do now is a technique that's called feathering the bass drum, okay? These are the elements that we're using: the ride cymbal, the bass drum. We'll later add the snare. We'll later add the hi-hat. These things, we're creating a groove from these moving parts, okay? So this is what I'm going to do. Actually, you know what? I'm going to add the hi-hat, and we're going to lock it in on 2 and 4. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. 2, 3, 4, 1. 2, 3, 4, 1. 2, 3, 4, 1. And when I play the ride cymbal, I put a little weight on the 2 and 4. Okay, I don't have a full-blown accent there, but a little. I kind of nudge that beat just a little bit, so there's a slight accent on the 2 and 4. and that's also being reinforced with the hi-hat. All right. And now one of the most important things about playing jazz drums and developing a good feel, and I would argue that's one of the most important things, is feathering the bass drum. In jazz, especially with when I see young players that are still in high school or maybe their earlier years in college, they have a problem with feathering the bass drum. And I understand because I had that same problem, okay? Feathering the bass drum is what reinforces the beat. It adds a low sonic frequency to your sound. It gives your sound weight, okay? It gives your sound, it's this intangible feeling of solidarity. It gives it the support and the low frequency to balance out the high frequencies of the cymbals. All right. So now what we're going to do is we're going to feather the bass drum on 4 beats. We're going to play 2 and 4 on the hi-hat, and then we're going to play the ride cymbal beat on the ride. Here we go. 1, 2, ready, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Now, that bass drum, it shouldn't be dominant. It shouldn't be. You're feathering the bass drum. So that means you're playing in a manner where the beat is more felt than heard. Okay, so we'll try it again. All right, we want to keep the sound of the bass drum under the sound of the ride cymbal and under the sound of the hi-hat cymbal. So we'll do that again. 1, 2, ready, and... Now, once we get that together, which takes time, then we add our snare. We add our snare to add some spark, some rhythmic spontaneity, some spice, if you will, to our beat with different comping patterns, with different accents, with different things that might highlight the melody, things that might set the band up for different figures within the music, or different things that might trigger the band to create to play a response back to you. All right. So we'll yes.
Before you jump into snare drum, this is a question from me. I haven't seen anything from the chat yet, but
okay.
I've taught middle school band for 10 years, and
all right.
So this is more of from a teacher perspective. If there's students watching, but that leap from no bass drum to feathering the bass drum is such, I mean, you do it so elegantly. Like for a 7th grader to do that is like, it's just such a monumental leap.
Yes, it is.
Besides like telling the kid to go take private lessons, what are, because the band director is always looking for little, nuggets to plug into their, to what they're telling their kids every day. So what are some things that can help, a band director get feathering down, because that's so hard.
No, believe me, a 7th grader is going to struggle with this, because I struggled with this well into college. Because the way we learn drums, and usually the music we come to drums with is usually a music that's based in a backbeat or a pocket, usually funk or rock. For me, it was gospel. For others, it might be a different type of music, and usually those genres of music, the bass drum is the focal point. So they're used to playing. And a music that requires a heavy bass drum. Jazz, the hierarchy of sound, is not built from the bottom up like many other genres of music that are based in funk. The hierarchy of sound in jazz is built from the top down. So it requires a different technique. We call this the heel down technique, where if this is the if these are the toes and this is the heel of a drummer, is to keep that heel on the ground and play flat-footed rather than playing heel up. So heel up is what generates the power and a lot of sound that a lot of drummers have a problem with when coming to jazz. Learning how to play heel down and controlling the ball of their foot, being able to control the volume in their foot is a thing that takes many years to master. So you just have to be patient with the 7th graders and tell them to try playing with their heel down, okay? Not with their heel up, play with their heel down and use the front part of their foot, the ball of their foot in their toes to generate the power rather than generating power from the heel.
That's great because, man, like you said, that is tough.
It's tough. It's tough.
Yeah. My go-to is always to just say, okay, don't play the bass drum.
They have to play the bass drum. They have to. That is so important. And a lot of times because they don't know how to control it. I've seen a lot of band directors do that. It's like, okay, you can't control the bass drum, just don't play it. But when they're not playing the bass drum, the band can feel that a good, especially if it's a big band, even in small group, that sonic frequency that you get from the bass drum is an intangible thing that that we a lot of times miss in big band drumming. I need to write a book on feathering the bass drum.
Yes, please do.
This is a common problem, so do not feel bad. This is a common problem. I struggled with this thing for many, many years until I finally got it together.
I think your comment about them, they have rock music in their ears, and that's what they're coming to it. So like making sure that they have jazz in their ears also, to get that sound,
Yes, because we're going to talk about that too. We're definitely going to talk about that because we're products of our environment.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in a heavily gospel music family. My mother was an organist. My father was an organist. My mother directed the choir as well and led worship at our church. So the music that I grew up on was, mass choirs, Chicago mass choir, Georgia mass choir, and the way you play drums in those groups is a lot different from the way you would play in a jazz group. So when I started learning jazz, I had to flip my whole mentality on how I approach the drums.
Great.
All right.
I don't see any other questions, so if you want to, let's hear about the snare. Let's do it.
All right. So now that we feather 2 and 4 ride cymbal pattern, now what we do is we're going to add the snare, and the snare doesn't have a locked in rhythm. The snare's rhythm is dictated upon what's going on around us. So if we have a melody, if we have some type of figure in the band, or some type of rhythmic motif that's being played, the snare is usually used to accentuate that thing. So what I'll do is I'll comp on the snare drum, and I'll comp some different figures that are simple, and then maybe we might go into something that might be a little bit more complex. All right, here we go. 1, 2, 3. Now, those are things that take time to develop. Usually what I do with brand new students is we start with playing time. We have to generate a good feel, because even the song, it don't mean the thing if it ain't got that swing, is the truest statement ever when it comes to drums. You know, you can't play jazz music without, you can't effectively play jazz music without a swinging feel when it comes from the drums. Okay. So let's talk about a couple more things that generates a swinging feel. Is the ride cymbal beat that's consistent, a strong sense of groove that we were talking about, forward momentum. Okay, this is an important thing when it comes to jazz too. It's playing forward, and I don't mean rushing. I don't mean playing frantically. I don't mean playing with anxiety. What I mean is playing forward in the time, to make the music feel like it has an edge to it. And this is a hard thing. This is a hard thing to develop. It's actually a hard thing to teach, because this is a thing that's personal to every drummer. Everybody's feel. You know, I named Herlin Riley, and I named Jason Marsalis, and I named Jameson Ross, and a lot of other great drummers that live here and reside here in New Orleans. But everybody's approach to forward momentum is different. You know, everybody's approach to playing time is different. So I'm pretty much describing this from my perspective. So I see playing forward in the time as giving the band a nudge, giving the band a jolt of energy. It's like almost like making sure that they're not falling asleep. So let's talk about some ways that we can play forward in the time. One thing that I do to create some forward momentum is playing upbeats. You know, in music we have downbeats and we have upbeats. So a lot of times I'll play a lot of upbeats in the bass drum. I'll play a lot of upbeats in the snare drum to create a little bit of anticipation, to create some rhythmic spontaneity. So I'll demonstrate real quick about how to play forward in time, and I'll play some upbeats to kind of generate a forward feel. Instead of crashing down on a one, I'll play on the and the four. You know, instead of resolving on dominant beats, I'll resolve on some upbeats that kind of keeps the music in the air rather than bringing it down to earth. Okay, so I'll demonstrate that for a second. 1, 2, 3. So those are some small things to do, and especially at a slow tempo, that's a thing that's hard to develop, because you want the tempo to not rush, but you want the tempo to be forward. You want to play forward in the tempo, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later too. All right, so we talked about balance and control of the limbs, and to have a good sound that's based in technique. So that's just the drummer by itself. That's the drummer in his practice room. That's the drummer who is learning these things on his own. So we haven't even talked about the music yet. We just talked about the basic technique of playing the ride cymbal beat, the swing beat, so to speak. Now, the second thing the drummer must think about is the players around him. So now the drummer must not only feel good playing by himself, now he has to play with the bass player. Now he has to play with the piano player. Now he has to play with the horns or with any other wind instruments that might be accompanying him. Okay, so now we have to talk about things like comping behind soloists. We have to talk about accentuating the hits within the music, controlling the tempo and the dynamics. We also have to talk about knowing the appropriate sound of the music. So after we get our stuff together in our own private practice room, you know, we feel confident because I can play a ride cymbal beat at different tempos. It feels good. I've been practicing with my metronome. I've been practicing with records. Now I'm ready to play with other people. Okay, and let's talk about that. Now, the very first thing that the drummer has to do is lock in with the bass player. The drums and the bass are married. All right. And for a marriage to be successful, there has to be give and there has to be take. Okay. You have to give a little bit, you have to take a little bit. And so when it comes to playing with the bass player and also with the piano player, usually the bass, the drums, and the piano make up the rhythm section. And so when it comes to negotiating the time, we have to talk about, okay, the relationship with the bass player and how he interprets the time or she interprets the time, and with the drummer and how he or she interprets the time. And we'll talk about this in different ways because when it comes to big band drumming, there's a little difference than when it comes to small groups. So actually, we'll delve deeper into that once we start talking about big band versus small group drumming. But that's one thing I wanted to highlight. We have to learn how to interact and play with other musicians, the bass player, the piano player, the guitar player, horn players, that whatever the ensemble consists of. Creating rhythmic spark, we talked about that. Energy that inspires the band. Rhythmic improvisation, spontaneity. Also, one thing we'll talk about later is even we'll talk about a little bit of soloing. But what I really want to hone in is the fact that you have to have a good feel and a good time before you can even think about soloing, because that's usually what most young drummers want to talk about first. They want to talk about, how do I sound like Tony Williams? How do I play, incredible, 30-second notes across the drums? How do I, wow the audience and get a standing ovation with my drum solo? And those things come much later once a drummer has a good foundation in the basics. So let's talk about going back to playing time and playing with the band. Let's specifically talk about the big band, okay? I'm gonna break this down into the big band and the small group. And if anyone ever has any questions while I'm talking about this, I will gladly stop and expound on something that you might need a little bit extra explanation on. Okay. So big band drumming. Drums are the most important instrument of the big band. You can't do big band without the drums. Drums are the engine of the big band. A plane can't fly without a pilot. A football team can't move the ball down the field without a quarterback. You can't do it. You can't have big band without drums. So, you have to, the drummer's responsibility in the big band, he has the hardest job. He really does. So for you middle school teachers out there, for you high school big band teachers out there, just be patient with your drummers. I promise. Just be patient with them. They have the hardest job. So it's gonna take some time for them to develop these things. And hopefully you guys will learn some things from this masterclass that'll help you when teaching them. So let's talk about the feel. I can't stress this enough. Please, make sure that your students are playing with the records. That is the ultimate source of jazz knowledge. It's the records. A lot of the people that we listen to, a lot of the drummers that we emulate, never step foot in a music school. A lot of these guys, they learn these things by first going out to hear other players play and being inspired, and also by hearing them on records and being inspired and wanting to emulate that sound. So for all you band directors out there and that are teaching, whether it be jazz combo or big band, whatever it may be, please have the kids learning and playing along with the record. That is going to teach them and get the sound. Me and Sarah were talking about what was talking about earlier, having the sound in your ear. And you can't emulate the sound if you do not have it in your ear. So the very first thing is to play along with the record. And I also have a PDF, and I didn't send it over, but I'm gonna also send this PDF that I typed up for this masterclass, just so you guys can have it. And use at your disposal. Okay, jazz is an oral tradition, so playing along with the records is because a lot of times we don't have a lot of big bands playing locally in many of our cities. I'm spoiled in New Orleans that we still do, but in a lot of cities in America there aren't many bands playing. So playing along with records, mimicking the sound and the feel. The process of trial and error. Okay, so we also talked about earlier is developing coordination and control between the limbs, so the groove is never disrupted. Coordination exercises can be found in books, and also with this PDF, I typed up a list. I typed up a page of resources that you guys can order for your students. In a lot of good books that can accompany the records that they're listening to and playing with, so they can get an idea of what's going on, and they can get a visual. They can learn visually and kind of see, okay, this is what these drummers are doing. All right. We talked about feathering the bass drum. Especially in the big band, that weight of the bass drum is so needed. Right now, I'm playing with an 18-inch bass drum, but usually in big band, I'll play with a larger size bass drum, whether it be a 20 or a 22, because that quarter note pulse is what needed. It's what's needed in the band. Okay, so the marriage between the bass drum and the bass player. Okay, so in big band, we put a little bit more weight on the bass drum to kind of have a lower sound, because think about a big band. We have 4 trumpets, 3 or 4 trombones, 5 saxophones, piano, bass, drums, guitar. You have a lot of high-pitched instruments. So what you have to do in big band drumming is the drums are usually tuned a little bit lower to kind of give some weight to the band. All right. So when we're feathering in a big band, we kind of want to play a little bit louder on the bass drum, just so the band can feel that beat. So being committed to the groove, a lot of drummers, I see a lot of drummers, especially young drummers, when they play rock and roll music or when they play funk music or when they play hip hop or R&B or gospel music, they play with so much intention. They play with so much conviction. That same intention and conviction must be brought to the bandstand when playing jazz. Playing jazz music doesn't mean playing light and timidly and weak. Jazz music means, because all those other musics that I just mentioned, they come from jazz. They're a distant relative of jazz music. So it has to have that same vigor, especially like grooves that we play in the big band, like the shuffle. Oh man, you can't play a shuffle. You can't play it weak. You can't play it timidly. It has to be strong. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about that Art Blicky Shuffle, because this is a common groove. We'll go into some common grooves that we have to play in the big band. So that Art Blicky Shuffle, when we listen to Art Blicky play Moanin' or Blues March or any of those things that where you hear the Art Blicky Shuffle, it's powerful. It moves you. It makes you want to dance. It makes you want to get up out of your seat. It makes you want to grab your partner and hit the dance floor. Okay, so the weight of that Art Blicky Shuffle is in that 2 and 4. You got the shuffle beat going on in your left hand, but the weight is on that 2 and 4. One, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. It's almost like you're in. You have to imagine that you're in some blues club, somewhere in the sticks, somewhere in the country, and it's a dim lit club, and it's like red lights, and it's just, it's everybody. It's a packed club of people dancing, and you have to think about that when you're playing jazz, a jazz shuffle, because it's that same type of feeling, because it comes from the same place. All right, so I'll demonstrate the Art Blicky Shuffle, all right, and give it that same intention. It has to move. It has to, make you want to snap your fingers. It makes you want to, keep. You gotta have the head knob. The head knob. And
I was getting up out of my chair on that one.
Exactly. Because
move.
That's what a shuffle is all about. It's a groove that kind of is conducive to dancing. Anytime you hear it, it's just like, okay, I feel like I'm at a bar or something. I need to get out there. So that's one of the most common grooves that we have to play in the big band, and it has to be done right.
That was really good, like being able to watch you do that from up above,
Mm-hmm.
and seeing your technique with both hands. Because again, my world is middle school jazz band. That is hard.
It's a lot of coordination involved, and that left hand has to keep the shuffle going, but also accent the beat. So it's playing a shuffle rhythm under it, but you're accenting 2 and 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, and I'll play the whole beat together. Here we go. So tell your kids when there's a tune that you guys get and you see at the top left hand corner Jazz Shuffle, just tell them to go listen to some Art Blicky. Art Blicky.
For sure.
Art Blicky. Some other thing. Go ahead. Go ahead.
We have a question in the chat that that came up. It's not really related to what we're talking about right now.
Okay,
So I don't know, do you want it now or do you want it?
Yeah. Let's go ahead and talk about it now. I know where I am. So once we're finished the question,
Yeah,
I can
and I
go
have
back
all
to
sorts of questions about this too. So, well, so DKNY Orr says, how did Gerald get involved into choosing the drums? Why did you choose drums?
I didn't choose the drums. This is what happened. This is a true story. Like I stated earlier, my mother and my father are both church organists and piano players. So, a lot of people thought I would play the piano, and actually it was the first instrument I played. But one day after church, my parents made the mistake of sitting me on some drums. And my mom tells me this story all the time. You know how moms like to tell us stories over and over again. My mom told me this story, and she tells me this every year. I picked up the drumsticks, and I just knew what to do. And they just knew from that moment, okay, this kid is going to be a drummer. And that's honest to God truth. I really didn't choose. I don't remember starting to play drums. I don't remember life not playing the drums.
So drums chose you.
The drums chose me.
Yeah, that's great.
Drums chose me. So not a long story. Is as simple as that. You know, they sent me on some drums. I was 2 years old, and I picked up the sticks, and I just knew what to do with them. So
that's great.
Any other questions before I jump back in?
Not in the chat. But I would love to get back into the big band drumming. Theme. I don't know if you're going to talk about this or not, but setup, like in the big band. I mean, sometimes you're kind of at the mercy of the venue, but you know, when you're sitting in the rhythm section in the big band, even in relation to the band, like where do you like to be? Where's the ideal spot? Like if I'm setting up my middle school jazz band,
okay,
where do you want to be?
Very good question. I love to be in the middle of the band. All right. I love being tucked in. I love the feeling. I love feeling the closeness of. That's why I love playing in small clubs, because you have to be close. Large stage, the band. A lot of times the band is spread out. But my ideal setup is to have the horns to the left of me, so you'll have the row of. We do this two ways. I play in two big bands here in New Orleans, and the setup is different from both. So in the New Orleans Jazz Orchestra, the drums literally sit in the middle of the band. So so say this is you're in the audience. This is me. Okay, forward to my right, which would probably be your left, will be the saxophones. All right, and then facing inward. So the saxophones are right here playing inward. The trombones, front line of trombones, and trumpets are playing inward, okay? So the conductor is right in front of me. The saxophones right here playing inward. Trumpets playing inward. Trombones playing inward. Behind the saxophone section is the piano. And then right beside me, in between me and the piano, is the bass. So I am literally the center point of the New Orleans Jazz Orchestra. The drums sit right in the middle of the band. And I love that because everybody's playing inward. So the sound is coming in. So it's really easy to hear everybody. And that's one of my favorite ways to play. And then when I play with Uptown Jazz Orchestra, that's led by Delphio Marsalis. The setup for big band is the traditional setup with saxophones on the front line, trombones on the second line. Back line is the trumpets, and that's all to my left. I'm right here. All right. Right next. So I can literally touch, this is probably fourth trumpet. I can literally reach out and touch him because he'll be right here. And then bass on my right, and piano right there on also on my right. So those are the two different setups that I'm accustomed to playing.
I like the flying V.
The flying V is
really cool.
It's ideal because everybody's sound is coming in. When we play in the traditional, it's a lot of times it's really hard for me to hear the saxes. So I have to play in a way where I can hear what's going on. And they're playing, they might stand up to play a solo, and their body is shielding their sound, and their bell is facing this way, and it's already a woodwind instrument, so that their sound isn't, as powerful as a trombone or a trumpet, which I usually have no problem hearing. It's those saxophones that are, that are sitting way up here. So I have to play in a way where my sound is still under them. I can still interact and actually know what they're doing. But when everybody's in that V playing inward, oh man, it's like it's perfect. It's like apple pie and some ice cream. It's great. It's great.
Yeah, like I said, I know sometimes you're at the mercy of whatever venue you're at. Like I'm thinking like at a jazz festival when I'm taking my band, I kind of gotta set it up whatever way they're telling me to set it up. But
don't feel like, if you please, like, move the chairs in, like play as close together as you possibly can. Snug Harbor forces the big bands to play close because the stage is small. So the big band, we're literally like the hi-hat stand right here is right here. This is the fourth trumpet player, like literally standing right over my shoulder. So he's literally right here. Same thing in Snug Harbor. The floor tom is right here. This is literally the bass player. I can reach out and touch the guys on the opposite end of the band. So it's a small stage. When we're playing with the New Orleans Jazz Orchestra, we're playing at a bigger venue. So it's a lot more spread out, but everybody's sound is coming in, which kind of compensates for the space.
I think too, sometimes like for students, you just have to give them permission to move. Like it's okay. Yeah. It's okay to move where you need to move to get your best sound, So as drummers too, I feel like a lot of times drummers will get on stage and they're playing a backline kit or whatever, and it's like, no, you can move it the way you want.
You can move it, yes. And a lot of times for drummers, like, and they do this a lot, they'll put drums on a riser, and you just feel so far away from everybody. And that's cool. I've played in a lot of situations where drums are, separated, because people come to festivals and you want to see the drums. I get it. I understand. But for me, if I had my way at every festival, I would be on the floor with everybody else, just tucked, nestled in there. I can hear everybody. I don't feel like I have to play loud. Because sometimes you're in situations where the monitors aren't the best. So if you can just hear everybody just acoustically, that makes everything so much better.
For sure. Well, thank you. That was a burning question in my brain. We have about 9 minutes left.
Okay, I'm gonna try to zoom through this, because I haven't even really talked about the small group. We're still on the big band. This hand, man, I typed up about 6 pages. I need to send this to you guys.
So we were able to, I grabbed your link and we were able to put it in the chat. So anybody who's listening or watching right now should be able to download the Dropbox.
Okay. So great. So we talked about common grooves in the big band. So I guess we'll just only talk about the big band. You guys can read more on the small group. And big band is more common in school, especially for younger musicians as well too. So we'll kind of focus in on the big band before we have to leave. So Blicky Shuffle, the second most common, well, I'm saying most common, another common rhythm that we have to do in the big band is chop wood, okay? Chopping wood is that 2 and 4 on the cross stick of the snare and the rim, and finding a good sound and getting a good pop, okay? You want that 2 and 4. You want that thing to cut through the band, because you want the band to lock in and clap. This is right here reminds me of church. I grew up in a Pentecostal church, playing drums in a Pentecostal church, and you have those old mothers, clapping that hand, and they always had those that pocket when they clap their hands. They just had that just that perfect pop. Same thing you have to get on the drums. So I'll demonstrate what chopping wood should feel like within the big band. Here we go. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. You know, like that is Count Basie, you know, that all day. You can't play Basie without being able to chop that wood. Got to be able to chop that wood, or Duke, any of those traditional big bands. You gotta be able to chop that wood. So making sure you get that good pop, you know, getting the meat of the stick, not too far inward, not too far outward, but getting the meat of the stick right on the edge of the snare. All right, we'll move quickly. Playing the tooth feel. A lot of young drummers don't know how to play the tooth feel. All right, and it's usually it's as simple as counting to 2. And playing the tooth feel leaves a lot of space within the time, which gives a lot of young drummers anxiety about, oh my God, why is there so much space in the music? And I understand. But once we learn how to play the tooth feel effectively, it helps. It helps the band breathe. It helps settle the beat. So what I'll do is I'll play the tooth feel. I'll do it on the hi-hat first, and then we'll do it on the snare drum. All right. So we'll do a tooth feel. 1, 2, 3. And the tooth feel is supported by the tooth feel in the bass drum. So we won't play 4 on the floor in the bass drum. We'll just play 2 on the bass drum. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. All right. And then we'll play it on the ride cymbal. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2, 1. Or we just play 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. It's kind of a dance, you know. It's almost like a you know, what's the type of dance that'll be? Like a 2-beat, you know, like a 2-step. You know, it's like a 2-step. And then what you do is you take the 2-beat on the cymbal, and then you can embellish on the snare. All right. Another groove in big band that we kind of see frequently is the Conga Swing. All right. And I'll demonstrate the Conga Swing. And it's emulating the addition of a conga player. But if we don't have a conga player, a lot of times we play Conga Swing on the high tom of the drums. Here we go. So we're playing 2 and a 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1. 2 on the cross stick, 4 and on the hi-hat. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. Another thing. Question?
We have about 2 minutes left.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I know you gotta get out of here right away.
I do have to go. So this is what I'll do. Please read the handout that I have with this. If you have any questions, I should have told Chris to put it on the screen, but we didn't talk about it before. But if you want to contact me, you can email me at gwatkins07@gmail.com. I will be glad.
We'll put that in the chat. Yeah.
Okay, please. gwatkins07@gmail.com. I will be glad to set up a time where we can talk, or maybe if you're interested in virtual lessons, I will give you the whole thing, everything that I know that I've learned over the years. I'd be more than happy to share with you guys.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Gerald.
No problem.
So I'll just go ahead and wrap up real quick here as we say thank you and you get out of here for your gig. Please make sure that you visit our festival website at mhcc.edu/jazzfestival for the full schedule of remaining events. Tonight there's a concert by the Tia Fuller Band at 6 o'clock. Don't miss that. And I know tomorrow Ingrid Jensen is doing a masterclass as well. Definitely not going to miss that one. And you can purchase festival merchandise at the website and learn how you can help support the festival in the future. Thank you so much for tuning in this afternoon, and hopefully we'll see you at 6 p.m. for Tia Fuller. And join me one more time in thanking Gerald Watkins Jr.
Thank you guys so much.
So wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys.
Have a great gig.